I never thought I would return to Denali after what I experienced last winter, but necessity and stubbornness tend to win battles you'd rather lose. I was out of work, and when the University of Fairbanks posted an ad looking for someone to install acoustic sensors in remote areas of Savage Canyon, I saw it as an opportunity. Not to make money, just to prove to myself that I wasn't afraid of the park anymore. A lie, of course. I feared it more than ever. But I went anyway, convincing myself that returning in a strictly professional role would somehow neutralize the dread that still lived inside me. I arrived at 6:50 p.m., with the last daylight filtering weakly between the canyon walls. The air carried that metallic scent that warns of a freezing night, a smell that always makes your lungs feel smaller. Fine snow crackled under my boots as I unloaded the equipment: directional microphones, steel stakes, 3 spools of cable, and a compact generator that looked more reliable than it probably was. The assignment required me to work alone through the night. The report said the area was safe. It also said that wildlife activity had been low all month. I believed it, until the silence itself began to feel directed at me. When the sun dipped completely behind the ridge, I switched on my headlamp. Its beam cut the cold darkness only a few meters ahead, leaving the rest in layered shadows that formed black, yawning tunnels. My imagination didn't need any help to populate them. I installed the first sensor against a broad, echo-rich rock wall. I crouched to adjust the metal base when I heard the first sound: a dull, heavy thud. Not an animal sprinting, not a rock slipping, more like something massive shifting its weight into soft, snow-dusted ground. I froze instantly, breath suspended in my throat. Seconds later, another thud, closer, then another, and another. An irregular rhythm, almost clumsy, yet far too weighted to be any animal I recognized. I turned my head slowly, trying not to move the rest of my body, scanning the darkness for any suggestion of shape. Nothing. Just blackness swallowing the canyon whole. "I know you're not here for ghosts," I whispered. "This is work, nothing else." But my hands trembled despite the lie. Thinking noise might grant me false courage, I pulled the generator cord. Big mistake. As soon as the engine coughed awake, the thuds stopped. The silence returned, denser now, charged with intention, as if something huge was listening. I forced myself to continue, installed 2 more sensors, began heading toward the canyon's rim for the last one. Snow was falling harder now, like tiny needles. No wind, no insects, no nocturnal calls. The forest's usual heartbeat was gone. That's when I heard it above me. Not a thud, a slide. Something gliding down the slope with slow, controlled precision. I lifted my headlamp. The beam barely caught a massive figure navigating the rocks, hunched, arms extended for balance. Not a bear, not a human. Its movements were purposeful but burdened, as if its limbs were too heavy for the world. I shut the light off instantly. My heartbeat roared in my ears. The silhouette vanished behind a stone outcrop. A second silence dropped, thick enough to suffocate thought. I stepped back once, twice, a third time. The attack came without warning. A violent crash exploded behind me, like a whole tree collapsing at once. I spun around just as a colossal shadow lunged between the trees. The displaced air slammed into me before its body did. I fell backwards, sliding across the snow, a scream ripped out of me. I didn't see its face, but I saw the hand, an enormous arm coated in dark, wet fur, bracing against a rock as if preparing to hurl itself at me again. I ran. I didn't look back, didn't breathe. I was nothing but terror moving through the dark. According to my GPS, I reached the main trail at 11:12 p.m. I don't know how. I don't know how long it followed me. Only that the memory of its uneven, heavy, wet footsteps still stalks me in every dream. And I know I wasn't the first, and I won't be the last. I always thought walking alone along the middle stretch of the sanctuary river would clear my mind. There was no wind, no tourists, no visible wildlife for kilometers. Only the sound of water dragging itself between the stones. That calm, false calm, was what convinced me to keep going, even when I noticed something was off. The first sign was a faint vibration under my boots. Not a tremor, not a noise, a kind of pulse repeating at irregular intervals, as if the ground were responding to an enormous weight moving somewhere in the distance. I crouched, placed my hand on the damp earth, and felt a rhythm. Slow, steady, heavy. I stood up, and that's when I heard the first clear sound, a deep breath. So low it felt like it moved inside the air rather than through it. Like standing near some massive engine, one that had no business existing in an empty valley. My instincts told me to retreat, but the moment I took my first step, the forest reacted. Something snapped a thick branch, not by accident, but like a deliberate gesture. I know you're there. This is mine. I turned to the brush lining the riverbank and saw movement. Not an animal fleeing, but a dark mass pushing through the shrubs with no hurry, bending them from below, like the forest itself was changing shape around it. My body moved before my mind did. I took several steps back. The attack started without warning. The creature burst from the undergrowth with impossible speed for something its size. A massive bipedal body covered in dark, wet hair. I didn't see all of it at first. What I saw was its enormous arms swinging toward me. I tried to dodge, but the blow grazed my hip and slammed me to the ground, knocking the breath out of me. I crawled away as best I could. The creature approached in long, deliberate strides. It made no sound beyond that deep breathing. That was the worst part. It didn't roar, didn't growl. It just advanced, confident it didn't need to intimidate me. I tried to stand, but I felt its shadow fall over me before I could. Bigfoot leaned down, placing one hand on the ground so close I saw the soil sink several inches under its weight. Its smell was thick, earthy, mixed with an animal sweat that burned the back of my throat. It watched me. I don't know how to describe the feeling. It wasn't curiosity. It was evaluation, as if it were deciding whether I was a threat, an intruder, or prey. It pushed me down with a dry, effortless shove, not to kill me, but to keep me pinned. My ribs cracked. I tried to roll toward the river, but the creature placed its massive foot on the edge of my backpack, trapping me without effort. It had me. I closed my eyes, waiting for the final strike. But it never came. The creature let out a short, irritated huff. It stood, stepped back twice, and went completely still. Then it turned and moved into the forest. Not running, not hiding, just leaving, as if I had stopped mattering entirely. I stayed on the ground, paralyzed, staring at the huge impressions it left in the mud. I'm telling this not because I expect you to believe me, but as a warning. Out there are things beyond our understanding, and I hope you never have to face one. Chocolate Valley had always been known for swallowing sound, but that afternoon the silence was so total it felt like a mistake in the world. I had lost the trail under a layer of uneven ice. Every step sank differently, as if the ground were breathing. I stopped in a clearing to check my compass when I heard something that should never echo in a place that open, a single deep crack, like a tree splitting, but there was no wind. I looked up. Nothing. only the valley stretching out like a white wound. But the echo of the crack didn't fade. It vibrated in my chest as if it had happened right behind me. I spun around fast. There was the first footprint, a solitary mark in the frost, as big as my torso, with edges driven several inches down. And the worst part? There wasn't another one nearby. It wasn't an animal's walking trail. It was as if something had dropped there from an impossible height. A low, heavy exhale rose from the tree line. It wasn't normal breathing. It was air passing through massive lungs, wet and cavernous, as if the creature were inhaling the entire valley. The sound was so physical, it stiffened my legs. I stepped back. The attack didn't start with a roar. It started with a burst of snow. Something moved so fast, it kicked up an arc of white powder that hit me in the face. I felt the air compress, like a massive body had rushed past me without touching me, but with enough force to hurl a spray of ice over my shoulder. When I looked up, I saw it for the first time. A huge figure, upright, dark, emerging partially between two trees, as if the forest were a curtain too narrow to contain it. Its shoulder was the width of a young trunk. Its back, covered in thick hair, vibrated with every breath. I couldn't see its face, but I saw its arm rising. Then it charged. It didn't run, it advanced in colossal strides, each one covering several meters. The ground shook under its weight. The sound of its steps was a wet, violent thud, mixed with a choked growl that tore through the air. I turned and ran, but it didn't take long to reach me. The first swipe didn't hit me fully, but it grazed my backpack and ripped it off as if it were made of paper. It flew 10 meters away, bouncing against the hard snow. The second blow did land. Something struck me from the side, a dry, brutal impact against my ribs that sent me tumbling across the frozen ground. The creature didn't release a battle cry. It only breathed loudly, almost irritated, as if my attempt to escape were an insignificant inconvenience. I got back on my feet, staggering. My vision was blurry, but I could see it approaching. Its steps were slow now. It didn't need to run. It already had me. It lifted its arm again, but at that moment, a thunderous crack erupted from the slope, a sheet of ice breaking loose, maybe triggered by our movement. The creature froze, turned its head toward the sound, and finally retreated into the shadows of the valley, melting into the tree line, huge, silent, untouched. I dropped to my knees, breathing blood and cold, knowing I hadn't escaped. It had simply decided to let me live.